Johnson, can we get a roll call, please?
Trustee Locke? Here. Trustee Garrett?
Present.
Trustee Oshpina?
Here.
Trustee Salahuddin?
Here.
Vice President Lee?
Here.
President Tejada?
Here. Oh, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, there are. So we removed item 4A from the closed session agenda. And for item 12B11, the personal action report, it has been updated to include 3 things. Approval of 2 additional substitute teachers. It corrects the salary placement of a new hire with verified experience that HR didn't have at first. And it reassigns an employee to a new site. So you have the changes, the new document in front of you, and Ms. Johnson will upload it to Agenda Online.
Okay.
Okay?
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda with those changes?
So moved with those changes?
Second.
Actually, you can pull one item from the consent.
Okay, what is that?
Yeah, the contract item. Sorry, I just had it. It is 2 items actually. 12C112 and 12C113.
12C112. Here it is. 113,
So C113 is
correct?
Yes.
All right, and then approval of the agenda with those items pulled.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Can we get an approval of the minutes?
Move to approve minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nothing to report out of closed session. And now on to the communications. We'll start with student trustee Law.
So for this past week, it's been really rough. A lot of students have been at home due to either close contact or they tested positive for COVID. And a lot of students have been coming to Mustafa and I and other student advisory members about concerns that they have for school. Some of the concerns are regarding lunch. And a lot of students have been eating in the cafeteria, no masks on. It's just been really crowded. So a lot of students were wondering if we could have more benches outside, and just so that other students could be outside eating. And since there's more ventilation, it's a lot safer. And also they were wondering about what would happen on rainy days, if there was like rainy day plans for lunch as well, because when it's raining outside, everybody else is also inside, which makes it all the more crowded. And a lot of other concerns that we have are also general COVID concerns, students feeling unsafe at school, and also find it very distracting and difficult to learn while trying to be safe and learning at the same time. Mental health is also a big issue that students are worried about as well. And students have also been saying for COVID testing on site, they would prefer if it was more regular, and find that the times are not very accessible during school hours, especially because for Westmore, the testing is on Wednesdays, which is our collab day. We don't have brunch, and our lunch is only half an hour long. And students have also found that the communication seems to be lacking on information about COVID testing, because a lot of students didn't know that they had to register before getting their COVID test at school. Well, that's all I have.
Reports, it's always important that we hear those information so we can try to, adjust or fix what needs to be fixed so that everybody feels comfortable. I hope everyone had a restful New Year. I'm disheartened that I know and hear of so many people who have gotten COVID, and I hope they get the rest and get nursed back to health as needed, and hope that everyone continue to keep vaccinated or get vaccinated so they can protect themselves and others. So other than that, I don't have too much to report, and do still look forward to the rest of the school year and hope things get better. So and that's all I have.
Yeah. Happy New Year, everybody. A few things. Obviously, acknowledging the efforts of students to raise awareness to the concerns, obviously, the public health concerns that are affecting everybody, but not as obvious because people aren't attending school. Students are, of course, impacted the most, and of course, with our staff and everybody on campus. As a teacher, I'm seeing many of these things too, and being aware of that and seeing colleagues, we're just knowing they're testing positive and they're out, and we have a shortage of subs, not just locally here, but regionally, statewide, and of course, nationally. It's good to see that Governor Newsom is passing laws to extend and expand the ability to hire more substitute teachers, and of course, retired teachers, and extend their ability to teach more than 30 days to 60, now 120 days. These are reassuring things, though, despite the circumstances. Hopefully, we can encourage more people to join us public education, which is essential work as anything is these days, but especially in serving our students, and I think under safe conditions. And to that effect, I want to also acknowledge the efforts of many staff in working in public education as a whole, and raising these issues, whether they are participating in sick outs that are authorized or not. I think these are the things that it takes to bring these discussions to a critical stage, such as that at board meetings, and seeing this in bigger cities and with higher rates being reported. I'm also aware too, during the break, it was very hard to find tests. So testing and something on our agenda today, which we'll discuss in a minute, I think is obviously of critical importance. As we know here at Serramonte, we provide a lot of services. One of them is we host Curative, which does testing. And they do it in a parking lot here for walk-ins or drive-in. And I myself, tried to come by and get a test, and they were booked for a couple of weeks during the break. So we know that a lot of our community are likely testing positive, but we don't know because we don't have access to the resources. And so looking forward to the discussions and the resources we're going to get. I know that the governor, Governor Newsom, just approved $286.4 billion in a new budget, 119 of which is allocated to education, 10 of which, 10 million, at least new spending to areas related to COVID. And so with that funding, hopefully we can provide more solutions and find more, not just, helpful ways, but responsive ways to address that. One of the key ones, I think, is making sure providing masks for all of our students and staff. We know due to research, not just from Stanford, but public health officials across the country, that N95 and KN95 masks, which are hard to come by, a little more expensive, should be provided to everybody learning and teaching on our campuses. So as schools are at, I think, some of the front lines of opening society as a whole, we've known that we pay special attention to not just the material needs, but the mental health needs as well, because we know a lot of people testing positive, just getting back to school and feeling like there's a new normal, aren't necessarily going to feel that way if they don't have the support coming back, and maybe after receiving grades at the first semester, that may be not what they expected. And so just paying attention to equity across all those lines, I think it's important to acknowledge the concerns and demands of our teachers and staff when it comes to safety and health on our campuses, as well as in our community. That said, I think it's reassuring looking at the governor's new budget proposal that a lot of what we're looking at is integrated into looking what we're doing with housing, immigration, across a number of issues that affect our community, including climate, including expanding childcare to make sure we can provide that so people can get back to work and people can get back to learning in a safe way. In addition, there are a few things I noticed that other districts are doing with regards to our meetings. Some people in the public may be wondering how people are attending public meetings, whether it's for school boards, city councils, et cetera. Public agencies have been adapting throughout the pandemic to provide public access. we are accessible through YouTube to watch meetings after the fact, but during the meeting, I just want to remind the public that there are instructions on our website, on our board agenda online website, in terms of how people can make public comments. I think that can be helpful. However, I do believe that we should be expanding and not restricting our public access online in consideration of the health concerns. I would again encourage our board to change our policy in terms of expanding Zoom access for the public to be able to attend virtually through video, including our student trustees who may not have the capacity to attend here or have similar health concerns. But in terms of equity, allow them the space and the platform to be able to participate online and have their voice heard. So I would encourage us to review that policy per the recommendations and resolution I forwarded last year, this fall, in addition to looking at updated policies in other districts such as San Francisco Unified School District, Oakland Unified School District. I have forwarded this information before. There are updated policies. The state has also issued updated policies, not just for obviously the safety of those in the board meeting, but for public access for our community at large. That said, I'm looking forward to seeing what else we can do. I know there's a few things on the agenda. I'll almost leave it there. The last thing I want to mention being last night, the City Council, the Daly City Council, held a meeting in regards to the future of the development here at Serramonte Del Rey, which also affects Westmore Park. I want to be extremely clear that everything that happens here at Serramonte Del Rey impacts what's happening at Westmore Park, regardless of which agency, the school district or the city, is in control of all the options going on with both developments, which are related. Secondly, I want to note that while the City Council did move forward with the preliminary plan, it was with conditions. And if people want to review the meeting, they can online. Check it out on YouTube. Honestly, I feel like the community has not had an ample opportunity to participate in this process. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and our priorities should be public health, safety, and of course, above all, public education. If we're talking about how we can support teachers and students, that begins with our health and safety, first and foremost, and part of that relates to sustainability of our community, and of course, integrated with climate change. So the garden, I want to reiterate, is a vital part of our community, and it always has been for over 20 years, and Westmore Park even longer than that. And so for anybody who is watching this, I want to encourage you to know that it's not too late to get involved. The City Council needs to hear your voice on both projects, and encourages that. I encourage that, and I believe there's still a window to have these conversations because nothing is over yet. And if you feel intimidated by any of that process, feel free to contact me, of course, and anybody in the community who is holding a platform and a space for those conversations to happen. Of course, this is why we have board meetings and talk about these issues in public, and this is why we encourage civic engagement in our communities. The same way we do in San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, across the Bay Area, California, and anywhere else in this nation. So do not feel pressured to be silent, because some people will count on that in order to make sure they get what they want, and tell you later on that you missed your opportunity, but it is not too late. That said, I would encourage people again to get involved with community-based organizing here in the Daly City and Pacifica, and of course through our district in Brisbane, Broadmoor, and Tacoma, because these issues affect all of us in San Mateo County. There is a congressional election right now, and these issues will be at the forefront. So that said, I hope everybody's staying as safe as possible, and of course, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Ms. Salavidi?
Yes, thank you. So first I want to say to everyone in our district, this has been a really hard time. This has been a really, really hard time. And I can only speak to it. It's not my lived experience because I'm not here working every day. But I just want to let everybody know how internally grateful I am for the work that they're doing. This is, you know, we were all hoping that 2022 would be a little different than previous years, and it seems like we've just started off and repeat, and people are getting frayed really thin. I mean, it's really, wearing on, you know, we all have built-in resilience. We all have a lot of strength, courage, but there's sometimes, you know, you just hit a point and you feel like you're going to break. And I know I felt that way a lot of different times just with the level of work that I have. So I can't imagine how everybody else is feeling. And so I just want to say that, you know, I empathize with how people are feeling, and I'm sorry that everyone has been put into this position once again. And I just, you know, continue my commitment to try to do everything that I can possibly do to help everyone through. So with that, it is disappointing to me that there doesn't seem to be a long-term plan from anyone, and I don't really know whose responsibility it is to have long-term planning to take care of COVID and specifically surges. So I know the county is really not wanting to be the main provider of testing anymore. And even in December, was trying to cancel the contracts with both the testing facilities that is at Jefferson and the testing facility here. I mean, they wanted it to end in December. So that took a lot of negotiation. I want to thank you know, Ms. Van Raphorst for her help in pulling another contract together so that we could keep the site here. It's on the agenda to speak about later. And that I do want to thank the county for working with me to keep the Jefferson site open and extend it through January. But, you know, their plan was to tell people just to go to pharmacies to get tested and, you know, or to go to their healthcare provider. And, you know, I have Kaiser. And, you know, in December, I was really sick and they wanted to test me. It took me 5 days to get a test, appointment at Kaiser. And then it was a 60-minute wait in the line. So if you have, you know, I can do that because I'm a salaried employee, you know, so I have that level of flexibility. But if you are an hourly employee and you're trying to use your lunch break or something to get tested and you have an appointment, that's almost impossible. The other thing about Kaiser is that it is drive-through. You have to have a car in this area to get tested at Kaiser South City. And so one of the few places that you can walk up to get tested is at Jefferson High School or at Bayshore or here, but it's even hard to do it here. So there doesn't seem to be a long-term plan. And whose responsibility is it? Is it the county? Is it the state? Is it the federal government to have the needed supplies? Like, it's hard to get masks. And it doesn't matter how, you know, what your privilege is, it's hard to get masks right now. It's hard to get tests right now. It's hard to get, it's still not easy to get a booster shot. People think it's easy. It's still a challenge. So how many years into this is it going to take to have this be seamless and efficient? I will say that this is another reason why we need universal health care, and that health care should be available to anyone without having to jump through a bunch of hurdles. Because this is how we stay safe. If people had access, easy access to the health needs, we would get through this faster. I don't know why we have to continually relearn this problem. Every time we come here, and the solution is we have a testing facility at the San Mateo County Event Center that no one can get to. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping to, you know, again, have those ongoing conversations with the county and to see, like, if it's not the county, then who is it that's going to step up and to really provide services that are adequately accessible to everyone. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Just listening to my colleagues this evening, all I have to just say is thank you again, once again, to all of our staff. Whether you're at the lower end of the salary schedule or at the highest end of the salary schedule, I know how difficult it's been for all of you. Nobody should have expected, at least nobody really should have expected it to be this bad. At least not from you know, when we were sitting all at home or doing our family visitations during the holidays. You're trying to hear a little bit about this and you're thinking, no, I think we'll be okay. And nobody expected that. Here we would, you know, here on January 3rd, suddenly just this wave, tsunami, so to speak, would just hit all of us. In this community, in the state, everywhere. And I know it's hard. It's hard for everyone. But you know, the only good thing, such as it is, that I can take out of it is that we are all in this together. We are here trying to do our best to help each other. And it's not easy. We've all been living through this pandemic for 2 years now. We've got to give each other a lot of grace, a lot of patience with each other. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy for me either. I want to be done just like everybody else. But I am eternally grateful for every single one of you, whether in the classroom, whether you're driving our kids, whether you're feeding our kids, whether you're in the district office. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You guys are all going above and beyond. Nobody signed up to be in education to do this type of work. Nobody expected this. But the fact that you are and trying to do the best for the students of our community is remarkable, and I am so grateful for every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate my thanks also to our JUHSD family from every level. This past year was really difficult for me after I lost my father, and during the pandemic, I could barely see him. We had to keep him safe, and there were no vaccines, so I didn't get to spend as much time with him as I wanted. So I think what all of us have suffered loss during all this. In every different way, we've all suffered a loss. And when my daughter was a sophomore, she said, oh, those poor seniors, they're not going to be able to go to prom or have graduation. When she became a junior, oh no, those seniors have lost their entire year. They're stuck at home. They don't get anything. And at least she figured, well, at least when I'm a senior, she thought that it would come back to normal. And it's been a struggle. You know, I drop her off at school and she's scared. You're supposed to protect your child. What do you do? She says, Mom, it's better for me to be in school. I'm scared, but I'm going to double mask and I'm going to eat outside. And she's had two of her friends are close contacts over the holidays. We were scrambling to get her a test. It's no joke. It's really hard. And I just want to thank everyone in our district who's been working exactly above and beyond. If it's taxing on our students and our parents, it's taxing on you, really. Our district office staff scrambling, you know, to help with, you know, every day everything's COVID. Everything's COVID. And I'm looking forward to when it subsides a little, but we're all learning how to cope, how to get through it. I agree who is responsible, who's going to step up. I know that, you know, I know Ms. Salahuddin always steps up, you know, because you've taken it upon yourself to serve this community in the way that you do. And I thank you for that. And, you know, our whole district office staff, crazy, the stuff that you're juggling. And I just want to thank you again. And let's get through this together. That's all I have to say. Let's see, Ms. Superintendent, Ms. Presta.
Ms. Superintendent.
Ms. Superintendent. I'm Ms. Rosie.
Thank you. So I have lots and lots of notes, but I'm going to kind of freestyle here and just talk. So first off, I want to echo the sentiments of the board and thank all of our staff. I don't really have words to describe how hard people have been working. And I certainly see my executive cabinet, the associate superintendents, on a daily basis and see what they're doing. I talk to principals on a regular basis and hear what they're doing and then hear from them. I'm not seeing every single person, but I'm seeing a lot. I went to Jefferson to help out with the food distribution on Saturday, and it was just actually really nice to have conversations with some people there to hear about, more about what they're doing as well. But really, at every level, people are kind of working nonstop, trying to ensure that our students and staff are safe, and that they're actually learning, right? That we're keeping schools functioning well during this time. And so I have been communicating more regularly, practically daily. I've been sending out messages to the community and to staff. Honestly, I attend meetings on a daily basis with the county superintendent, with that she's bringing information from the health department, et cetera. And information changes on actually a daily basis. I had a conversation with the county superintendent yesterday, and she had one set of information, and then today at a meeting, it was different. And I said, wait a minute, what? And she goes, yes, I'm sorry. It's different now. So thank you. I forget, somebody said, Andy, I think, said, we have to have grace with each other. And so I ask that of all of us for each other, because everybody really is doing the best they can and has positive intent. So with regard to just our response to Omicron, we all see what's happening. We know it is rampant in our community. I'm sure that many of you have listened to the news and read articles and seen and heard that it is so widespread that they think that it's moving to endemic, so that it will just be part of what is happening. But it's really rampant. And so what we've done in our district, we're fortunate that we already had daily testing available for staff and students at different sites. So on different days of the week, we have, basically all day PCR testing. As has been suggested, it would be great to step that up, but as has probably been witnessed by most of you, it's really hard to find anybody to do it. So access to increasing that PCR testing we haven't found it. We have not been able to increase it. If we can, we will. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but we have not been successful in that thus far. I want to thank Doreen Basuino, who stepped up and is providing, doing the staff rapid testing here at the district office every day from 3:30 till 5:30. That has been really, really key because the CDPH, I have all these notes, I'm not following my notes at all. We're following the 5-day isolation guidance from the California Department of Public Health, and that applies to students and staff. And what that says is, if somebody is COVID positive, they have to isolate for at least 5 days. At the end of those 5 days, it really ends up being 6 days, because I think you count that first day as day 0 when you test positive. At the end of that, if you take a rapid test and the rapid test is negative, and if your symptoms have subsided and you have not had a fever for at least 24 hours, you may return to work for the employees, and you may return to school for the students. So if you're an employee, the school district must test you. You can't show us proof, or you can't attest to the fact that you took it. The school district must test you. So we do have access to rapid antigen tests for the staff. We did hand out student tests that were in boxes of 2 that were provided by the federal government, gave them the funding for it, and the state provided them to school sites. We didn't find out about that until I think the second week of winter break. So we really, again, kind of last minute, and to your point, like who's planning for all this, last minute came down, thank you to Marcus Peppers our director of maintenance, who got one of his drivers to go down over break, pick it up for us. And, you know, I was on the phone with Miss Casey trying to figure, she was ready to hop in a van and go pick them up. So we really figured out how to get them to our sites and pass those out to students. We don't have more supply of those. We had some extras that were, I think, given, the sites had some extras on hand, and they're giving them to the students who weren't there on the day when we handed them out. We don't have more of those. We're trying to get more, but we haven't gotten more to send home. So just earlier this afternoon, I sent out a communication to the families with a form that they will need to fill out for their students if their student tested positive and has isolated for 5 days. They can give their student a rapid test and fill out this Google form and attest to the fact that they've received a negative on the antigen test. And then that information will go to the school site, and the school site will allow the kids back. So in a nutshell, everybody needs to test before coming back, if you come back within those 5 days. If you want to wait the 10-day quarantine, if you don't have access to a rapid antigen test, or if you still have symptoms, you do need to quarantine for 10 days. You don't need to rapid test after those 10 days. Let's see. We are taking precautions at schools. I do want to respond to Trustee Law. I'm really glad that you brought these comments up. I have received some emails from students, and I do want you to know that I hear you, and we are going to take your suggestions, and we're already talking about many of them. We are deferring non-essential gatherings. So at the beginning of last week, you know, I sent an email to principals and said, you know, of course, dances and whatever, all those non-essential gatherings, not having them. We are holding our non-instructional business meetings through Zoom. We actually have an executive cabinet meeting once a week, and we talked this morning, should we all sit in the same room for 2 hours? Or maybe not. And so we did it via Zoom. So we are doing those when possible via Zoom. Of course, not everything is possible to do. As I said, we're increasing the testing protocols with the rapid antigen tests, and we're going to do that really until we're through with Omicron. Start off, we were just going to do it last week. And then Ms. Bespino said, I think we should probably do it. I'll do it next week if you want me to. I said, yes, let's do that. Really, we're going to have to do it, I think, through this Omicron surge. Let's see. Talking about eating and drinking, I think that is actually something that we're going to need to figure out ways for students to eat outside. And it really, I think we know that is when you pass this virus, right? So students should be eating outside and should eat quickly, should eat spread out. I gave this advice to my own 13-year-old. I said, don't sit right up next to your friend when you're eating. You do have to eat during the day and do it quickly and kind of space yourself out. I've heard the suggestion of silent lunches, like don't have people talking, just get to business, eat your lunch and be done with it. So we'll be talking with principals and see if we can help in some way. We may need to provide structures so that if it's raining, because that's a good point, it rained last week, right? So what are you going to do? So that's something that we need to figure out as a school district and do better at. I want to address the fact that many people are wondering why we didn't, and I've addressed this in some of my messages, but I want to also acknowledge that I'm kind of peppering you with messages. So you can look on the website and my messages are housed there. I want to thank Mr. Warden for helping me to get everything onto the website and have it be accessible. We're open to suggestions because we're doing our best, but we're, also not webmasters. I want to address the wonderings that people have about, well, why aren't we going to distance learning? Like, why didn't we just do that? Well, unfortunately, there's no legislative method for us to do that. We are not allowed to go to distance learning. So that's not an option. It was an option. In fact, we were told to go to distance learning last year. We were directed to. So schools are not able to go to distance learning right now. There is an option for students to do virtual independent study. That's a completely different thing, though. That is not the same thing as hybrid or distance learning. That's not an option for us. I've also heard, well, why don't we just close school? When you close school, there's some different pathways that you can go down. There's a form that you can fill out and submit to the state that says, we had a natural disaster, or the electricity was out, or something like that. We were not able to hold school for X number of days, and that's fine. That is all you need to do. We can't do that process or that form during COVID. There's specific rules about what we have to do. We have to provide independent study for the whole district before we move to that, many different things. So that's really not an option either. The other thing is, I've heard from some people, well, why don't you just close for a week? Why don't we just close for 2 weeks? And the thing with that is that if you do that and just add on to the end of the school year, well, then you're bumping into a lot of other things at the end of the school year. So in a nutshell, it's a dilemma. There's no perfect answer. And to add to the idea of just closing, I lost my train of thought. So at any rate, we talk about these things I know what I wanted to add. This Omicron surge it's probably going to be another 3 or 4 weeks. It's not going to be, 1 week is not going to do it. So, we talk every single day. My leadership team, the principals with my leadership team, we really are kind of pivoting. At the beginning of the year, I said the key word this year is pivot. We are pivoting daily and making the best decisions that we can make with the information that we have. And I really do welcome your thoughts and your concerns and all of it, because the more thoughts, the better. So the final thing I want to say about this Omicron surge is yesterday I sent out a communication letting everybody know that on a very temporary basis, we were going to stop sending the individual notifications about the close contacts. That decision was made, what we did is we essentially notified everybody that they were a close contact. Because what I'm learning from, because the information that I received is that essentially we all need to assume that we're a close contact right now, because there's so many people in the community and our schools have it. And the reason why I made that decision was our administrators and staff at the school sites were spending all of their time contact tracing and notifying about close contacts. At the same time, being crippled by teachers and staff being out because they're sick. So neither is a perfect answer, but they were spending so much time on notifications that they were not able to do what they needed to do in order to keep schools functioning. And that is our primary goal, is the safety and the functioning of the schools on a daily basis. So this is a very temporary measure. It is hopefully for maybe a week, maybe 2. And we are notifying unvaccinated staff. We're notifying staff if they were close contacts, if they were unvaccinated. So there's some caveats. We are making some notifications, but the mass notifications, we're going to put a hold on for a week or 2. And I just want to say I understand that makes that doesn't feel great, but it is where we are right now. So it's my hope that we will resume in a week or 2 when things calm down a little bit. Right now, we're still going up. The numbers in the county are still on the rise. So I think that is it. I just want to end on, my door really is open. My email really is open, so please do contact me if you have questions or thoughts. And thank you thank you for the crazy hard work that everybody's doing. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is the AFT Local 1481 report. Ms. Casey?
Well, hello everyone. Happy New Year. If I haven't seen you, I could say the exact same things that everybody has talked about, the concerns. One of the major things is, of course, our lack of substitutes. So thank you for trying to hustle and getting some substitutes on the board agenda, and hopefully some of our student teachers can do the same thing. At one of the sites, we had 18 staff out and only 3 substitutes. So you can imagine the heavy lift that everyone else had to do. I apologize to students who are sitting in a cafeteria with me and 3 other classes, and there's no, I apologize that there's nothing I can do about it. And there might be great lesson plans left, but if you're in a class with 3 or 4 classes, there's nothing you can do. People have been stepping up in an amazing way. We've all seen it. So I just wanted to say that. One of the concerns that I wanted to bring up, obviously if you have children, small children, and their classes are being closed because there's so many cases, or for example, daycare, home daycare, if those are getting closed. So that's a big concern people have right now. And I want to say that people were so thankful at the first year that we were dealing with COVID, and we had childcare here on this campus, and people were like, oh my gosh, people really do care about me and my kids. And of course, they know that that's true. We have to come up with some kind of solution. I just don't know what it is. And again, it's that same idea that whose responsibility is it? And why does it always fall on our shoulders? But that seems to be what happens. The state, the federal government needs to be able to do something, and they're not doing it. But that is a big situation that we're dealing with. A lot of people are stressed out because their students, their children, you can't just leave your child at home if they're under a certain age. And then the lunch logistics, that is a big issue that we're all talking about. So another thing as far as testing students regularly, pool testing is another thing that people are bringing up over and over again. And so I'm just mentioning a few things that maybe I had heard or I hadn't heard. So, and then the PPE, so the K95 masks. If we could find out how to get them to students as well, and to get them more than just once a week would be great. So people are concerned about that. And of course, same issue. Why does it fall on our shoulders? But it looks like that's how society sees us, I guess, is we're the ones that have to do the heavy lifting for everything. Everything, it seems. I just want to remind, this is something I told my exec board today. I want to remind everyone, and I know some people are going to be mad at me for saying this, but education is not just about subjects. I'm a math teacher, and a lot of people, have their ideas about math and math teachers. And I honestly can care less about math right now. I don't care about it at all, because if my students, and I know I'm not teaching right now, but if my students are just worried about the math and not worried about the humanity around them, then I'm not doing my job, because we're teachers of humans. The subject is just a vehicle to learn, to figure out how to learn better, to figure out how to go forward and make decisions and take something that's very difficult and figure out how to piece it together so that you can make sense of it. So we need to make sure we teach our students and help each other. be human to each other and show compassion. We don't all agree on all those things. We don't agree on how that looks. But if we can kind of get closer together than further apart, that's what I have spoken to my exec board about. And so I wanted to bring that up today here. I'm going to excuse myself. I'm going to leave at 8:15, so I apologize. I'm going to be leaving early today, but I'll stop now so that we can move on with the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Presta, you had something to add?
Thank you. I wanted to add one thing because Ms. Casey brought up something that I meant to mention, but I stopped looking at my notes. The KN95 mask, so thank you for bringing up PPE. There is a need, we do have a need to provide more. We have put in an order for more. Actually, we got some pretty quickly and distributed them to sites, several hundred to each site. But we need more. And so the county office superintendent, County Superintendent Nancy McGee asked superintendents just a few days ago if we wanted more, if she could get more, and we said yes. So I just found out today that the county office has KN95 masks for us, and we are gonna be getting them. I don't know the quantity, but it is our goal to get more masks out to the sites to be used, of course, from staff, but hopefully enough to give them to students as well. That's my hope.
Thank you. So no COVID-19 response update?
Well, I mean,
Or do we?
I think we should, because there was questions that I had, but I didn't want to interrupt the report.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talked about the masks, so I'm
Yeah.
trying, because we have the legislative call, so I'm trying to figure out, like, what do we advocate? We have the legislative call
Right.
Thursday, so what do we advocate for? So, for me, like, how much does it cost to get masks to every student? And, so that we can talk about that, because if the message is gonna be, we all need to lock arms and be in solidarity about having school open, then we should have the supplies that we need to have school open. So to get information about what would it cost to have masks, and I know the KN95 masks are a little different, that, you can wear these for a couple of days, so, giving everyone 2 to 3 masks a week per student, like, how much is that? Because I know these like $1 a person, so.
So I'm looking over it at,
You don't have to know today,
yeah,
but I mean.
but we can cost
Oh,
that
yeah,
out.
I mean, they were like $1.50 a piece when we just now bought them, but the prices are going up and the supply is going down.
But we can
have-
figure out, so $1.50 a piece by, 4,300
4,000
times 3.
students.
Yeah,
Another 500 staff, and
Yeah.
if you're talking about how many weeks are we gonna
Yeah,
do this
yeah.
for?
so we can figure out a number.
And just give it to
Yeah.
us so that we can
Yeah.
just talk about that.
Yeah, and because that is what we need. Like, it really is a hill to climb.
Right.
Mhm.
And then we don't have to answer this tonight, but these are just things that I've been thinking about for the long-term planning, because it seems to me like this is not going anywhere. Like, we're going through the whole Greek alphabet, this is how I'm learning it. So, like, can we develop like a long-term plan for lunch where we have folding or something that could go outside, more spaces that,
Right, yeah.
that could be break down, put up, whatever.
Yeah,
So, and kept on storage for like the next surge, like what,
That's exactly what I was thinking today, is that we need to provide structures and
Right.
actually, yeah.
and then to think about hallway management during surges and what can we do to, like, for crowd management? And do we need more help? And is the flexibility that we now have from the governor and hiring people, can we hire people to like direct traffic, things like that, so that it's not so crowded and people aren't feeling unsafe? Because I know myself, like, if I see a crowd, I'm like, hold up, and this is just thoughts, not, and then the mask wearing, and I don't know what we do to keep people with their masks on. And I know that's a problem, but like, is there anything, like, have we talked to parents? Like, has there been just a communication just to parents about talk to your student about keeping that mask on? That's solely,
So actually, that is one of my big messages on Friday,
Okay.
and the county office has prepared a 2-pager on masks.
Okay.
So that is Friday. Yeah.
gotcha. And then for the testing, so again, we talked before about, just offline about Palo Alto and that they had parents coming up. Like, so you talked about the access issues with COVID testing. Could you explain what do you mean by that?
The access
You
issues.
said there was, for the COVID testing for the students, there was access issues.
I don't remember what I said.
Oh, no,
But I'm sorry. What I do, so what I think maybe you're referring to is that students, we have testing on site every day of the week, but it was set up for students to come. It wasn't set up for a surge, right? So it was set up for sort of normal time when most people don't really care about a PCR test. I didn't get after things sort of died down, I stopped getting PCR tests on a regular basis. And it wasn't until this surge happened that I was like, oh, better get my PCR test once a week just to make sure. So similarly, students can access the PCR testing on their site or really another site but it's before school. They're supposed to go during non-instructional hours. So I think that maybe that's what we're referring to is that students aren't at certain sites. I think they are allowing the kids to go out, leave class to go get a test, but certain sites aren't. So it's something that we're going to need to talk about as a team to make sure that I do want to make sure that students have access to the PCR testing. And I know that certain people have better access than other people. Do you know what I mean? Just by virtue of certain people make better access for themselves. So, so that might have been what I was talking about. And I do know that we did have a conversation, offline conversation about Palo Alto. The superintendent of Palo Alto just made a plea to the community to say, we need volunteers. Can you come and help right now during this surge for the things that you're talking about, like crowd control and that kind of thing. And so I think that we're going to make a call.
Then my last question is does the lab that we're using also having delays with getting?
Yeah.
Okay.
The lab that we're using is Valencia Lab Color, and they're having delays. Yeah.
So that's the other part of this is like, even if you get tested, it seems like it's like a 3 to 4 to 5 day turnaround. So
It is.
More emphasis on having the mask and the other things because you don't know if you're infected for a significant amount of time.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I emailed you about the Student Advisory Council is really wanting to be able to message things out because they've been getting a lot more followers and getting more engaged. And so even parents have been asking questions on the Instagram.
Yeah.
So it would be good if we could use them more because they really want to help and dispel some misinformation, but also provide information because they're hearing a lot of the same questions. Why can't we go to distance learning?
I know. Yeah.
Their last post that they explained why. And so that's a good way to get things out there. And I think that regarding the masking, we have to have a campaign. I think it's not just a flyer, it's a constant barrage.
Agreed, yeah.
You know, and if we can come up with something catchy that kids will respond to, if I mean,
that's a good idea.
We can even have, I could have my daughter work on it.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I'm glad that you brought that up to President Tejada. You did email earlier, and Mr. Worden, I'm calling, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think you've already you responded that you
I actually sent out our first social media post tonight with superintendent's most recent message and actually tagged that group.
Okay,
so
great.
Yeah.
They are now on our official, who we add to all of our social media. They're now on that.
There was Jefferson High School had shared the post from JUHSD Advise yesterday, and parents were responding to it.
That's, yeah, it's awesome.
And then there was, then the webmaster there said, well, this is not, I would send your concern to the superintendent.
Yeah.
And it was, the response was, oh, I thought JUHSD advised was the superintendent. So, you know, at least they know that it's, they think it's getting to someone who can do something about it.
Yeah. I think it's just coordination, because I know I didn't even know that existed. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
I didn't even know JUHSD Advise existed. JUHSD Advise.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, glasses.
Quick
Yes.
question and comment. So I know this is a report, this is part of our meeting on the agenda. Are we still engaging in questioning and answers for this part of the meeting?
Are we still?
This is for the COVID report. This
Right.
is just question and answer. Yeah, sure.
Right, right. I was
Yeah.
just making sure, okay.
So do you have something?
Yeah,
question?
thank you for the information, and of course, our district staff work on all of this. The work obviously doesn't come without questions. I think one of the things we've encountered is that notifying the community is extremely important, although the community, of course, is being vigilant, because everybody's looking for tests, for masks, for solutions, outdoor dining being one of them. There are only so many things that I think obviously school districts can do within their resources, but we have received a sizable amount for our budget for COVID-19. So given the resources that we do have, I think it's incumbent upon us to put whatever we can towards getting as many masks as possible and as many tests as possible. I know in some districts, they had delayed shipments of tests, but in some, they had them distributed prior, and even if they could, mailed and delivered prior to returning to school in late December and then, of course, early January last week. In addition, we have masks on campus that we routinely obviously give to our students. Of course, this stage is requiring us to look at the higher level masks. So I would recommend that we immediately purchase as many masks as possible for our students. Obviously, several hundred. Is that just for staff or for students as well?
We distributed, I don't know, more than 1,000 masks this week.
Yep, just for staff.
It was just for staff. And so what I was sharing is that the county is sending, and I'm not sure the number, so it's my hope that we will receive enough to do students and staff. But honestly, this is an ongoing issue. So as you say, we'll need to keep ordering more in order to have a plan so that they can get 3 a week and, you know, not have it be one-time deposit of masks.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. In addition, I think one of the things in my experience too is obviously we don't have distance learning. That is not allowed under California state law. Independent study is a different platform for learning. It is currently in many districts being issued through online learning hours, short-staffed as may be. It's something I would highly encourage our district into looking into at
We
this
do
stage.
have it.
Yeah, I know we do. I'm in terms of demand. There are students who obviously they or their parents and families in the community are concerned that if we're not, you know, we don't have everything, you know, prepared, or school districts as a whole are struggling with these issues, that their decision might be to pull their students and want them to learn essentially virtually. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's completely sensible. What we do know is there's no substitute for in-person learning. As a teacher who is teaching in person, who is taught online, and with independent study, I understand, has some of the best practices that we can apply, because they've been doing that throughout the pandemic and even through the return to school in many districts. So I would encourage looking into what other districts are doing with their independent study programs, because enrollment will increase. We know that if we open and expand our platform for independent study, there will be demand for teachers, some of whom may even be interested in teaching through independent study in the interim while we get through a pandemic. Of course, many students as well, including many students with IEPs, students who may obviously, in my opinion, many would benefit from in-person learning, like any student, more. However, because of medical or any other mental health conditions that they're struggling with, they might find that learning online at this time is more suitable. And giving them that option, I think, is very important. In order to create that option, we kind of have to build that option into our school district's curriculum, and of course, provide those options for our teachers to discuss so that they have these discussions at the site level. I would highly encourage looking into that immediately, because while I think 3 to 4 weeks is the anticipated surge right now for Omicron, we know from looking at some of these contracts with Curative, which we'll talk about in a second, they come in waves, and testing may be needed maybe indefinitely through the semester, if not the year, who knows? And so I would just encourage those. I'm glad they were brought up. I think definitely the work we have at some of our alternative forms of education in our school district through Oceana and, of course, Thorne have provided other outlets for learning, and certainly building into that a mode for independent study in this time, and maybe long-term should be something that our district should consider, as well as many districts throughout San Mateo County, if they don't already exist, and are being built out similarly to bigger cities. I don't know that, I will be interested in what the budget looks like in terms of shifting those resources. Certainly if a teacher's getting paid at one site, they simply would be paid to work through another site. But in terms of staffing, I don't know what that would entail exactly, but I will be interested in seeing what that looks like, and how we can provide that. And so that is a recommendation and a question for mine. But
Yeah, so we actually did increase our remote independent study this year and increased the teachers. I believe we have 2 remote independent study teachers right now. Was that in the weekly recap? Yeah. So we have increased, and the teachers based upon demand. So as you said, more people chose it this year. So yes, I'm in agreement with that. Yeah. And we'll respond to the demand. Mm-hmm.
thank you.
We'll move on to the consent agenda items.
President Tejada, we do have one public comment for an item on consent agenda. So
Okay.
I just want to, Jake Ehab Abu Zaria has item 12D1.
12D.
12D1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ehab Abu Zaria. Willie, I'm not. If Ehab Abu Zaria is on the line, can you raise your hand?
Yes,
Confirm that you wanted to speak to Jefferson's school site plan?
yes, I have a concern.
Okay, great. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, so they're allowed to go to remote independent study, correct?
You can you could just use this time to give your comment, and then we can respond accordingly. But go ahead and just use this time to give comment.
Okay, because you guys are no longer notifying students, and with my brother being a student in the district, and me being a high risk, and other family members being a high risk, I don't feel that it's safe for him to be going to campus at this time. And I have a infant and a toddler that cannot be vaccinated at the time. So with Omicron being such a high spread, I don't feel that it's safe. And I don't think teachers should be demanding students to come back to school and thinking they're just taking off school just to take school off. They need to understand there's high risks involved with students going to school and whatnot. So I also believe that the school should let students know and parents know as well that there's other options such as independent study for this time. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you so much for your comments.
No problem.
So that is the only speaker to an item on consent.
All right. So, let's see. Why don't we? So let's take the two pulled items separately and discuss that and vote on those, and then we can do the consent agenda, the additional consent agenda items as a whole. So the item that was pulled is 12C112, the curative contract. And so, Mr. Ochapinti, you have a question about it?
Yeah. So here we have a contract for Curative Incorporated Facilities Use Agreement. We've been working with Curative here at the Serramonte campus, obviously, and we have other testing sites, Jefferson High School, and certainly others in the county. We've had Curative, we've been working with them for about, well, through the pandemic. And so it's good to see that we have a continued relationship, and certainly we need that, obviously, from our discussion today and prior discussions, and I think just what we know about this pandemic, it's imperative that we do that. My first question would be that there's a shift here. The description on the agenda is that currently San Mateo County is the holder of the facility use permit, and they have an agreement with Curative. The county has asked that going forward, the facility use permit be directly between our district and Curative. Proposed agreement has been reviewed by County Council and recommended for approval. So my first question would be, and this is for the public to know too, why is this being proposed now versus in the beginning of our working with Curative? First question. And the second part of that would be, why is the county urging us to do this at this time?
So
Both, yeah.
okay, so the issue is, as I said before, the county no longer wants to be responsible for testing on a weekly basis in the county. So the county is looking to close all the community-based sites they wanted to close them all in December. So we pushed back, and especially me, I pushed back and was like, that's crazy. We're getting ready to step into what's looking like a surge. We need to keep this site here. And so in order to do that, the county canceled their contract with Curative. The county is no longer using Curative for their testing. So now Curative is doing the testing on their own without a county contract. They need a site. So now Curative is leasing the site directly from us. They're no longer working underneath the county. So before, the county had the site, had the contract with us for the site because the county was the one that was using Curative. Curative is now operating independently, and they independently are, we're approving this facility use because they're independently working on their own, and they just need a spot to do it. And then Tina or Tony, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I'm the one who also talked with the county. That's true that Ms. Salahuddin did the lion's share of the negotiation to make sure that they would continue to be here. This is one of the busiest testing sites in the county. What I heard from the county staff was that it was under the emergency management division of the county, and they shifted testing to the health department side of the county. And at that point, that was when they decided that it was no longer going to be something that the county put their resources towards, was, continuing these agreements. And they also said that, there's really no reason for them to be a middle person in this relationship, because it was really just Curative had this agreement with the county held the facilities use agreement with us, and there was no money or anything, so it didn't make sense to them to stay in the middle. They suggested, or they encouraged us to just have the facility use permit directly between JUHSD and Curative. And And I did put all this in the weekly update to the board.
Yeah, and one of the reasons, to piggyback on what Ms. Van Rapport says, the county is saying there was no money exchange. That's not entirely true. One of the reasons why they don't want to hold a contract anymore is that if they test someone and their insurance doesn't ring through, or if they test someone that doesn't have insurance and they don't provide the proper ID, the county is on the hook to pay for that test. They don't want to pay for testing anymore. They don't want to pay for anybody's testing. So what's going to happen is that curative is going to be really strict. And if you don't have the proper insurance or you come there with no ID, you probably will not be able to get tested at this site anymore, where before that wasn't the case. It's the same thing with the site that we ran at Jeff. We tested anybody and we just took whatever information they had. And a lot of people, and understandably why, afraid of, their status, undocumented status, et cetera. And so now it's going to just make it harder for those folks to get tested.
Partially, yeah. Thank you for that. One obviously concern is, I just want to be clear, was there money involved with the county funding anything or not?
Yeah,
Not between us.
Not between us, but the county. So the money that came from the county was, if somebody came and got curative, is billing folks to take those tests.
So the billing, that part.
The billing. So either your insurance pays for it or Medi-Cal pays for it.
Right, that's what I remember it being. I guess my second concern, which I think was mentioned, is, it's one thing for the county to have, played a role in just making sure the permits were there and that we could do these things. I remember the county asked our district to host a site. I also remember that time my request was a question for our former superintendent, Deloria, that there are several sites in Daly City in North San Mateo County, including empty mall parking lots and places that could be sought out in terms of collaboration across public and private partnerships that we could use and could be more effective, given that our parking lot is very small. It's in the back of our school district. We have a high school located directly behind it, which downwind could carry whatever people, are getting tested into the area where our Shasta Summit Public Schools is located, in addition to everybody who works at our district office. So that was a concern, but we're all in this together. So I think it's very important for all of us to pull together. However, I do believe if this is where we are, if the county is pulling back because they don't want to pay for that, my question is a question of funding. As public agencies, it's incumbent upon us to make sure we're providing that. So, of course, those of our community who don't have the resources or who are undocumented or otherwise unhoused or perhaps just confused on how to access the process, I'm glad we're providing that. But my question would then be, if we're paying the bill for that.
No, we're not paying the bill for anything.
So then, if the cost is being deferred to the county before, and curative was going to turn people away because they're a private agency and they don't feel that's a requirement, it's not upon their responsibility to do that, then what would be different between this and before? Who would be paying for people who?
I think that the difference is that the county was that anybody could go, and if you didn't have insurance, they let you get tested. And I think that the difference now is they're going to turn people away that don't have insurance. That's my assumption.
It's not that you don't have insurance, is that if you don't have insurance and you don't give them an ID.
Okay.
So that's the problem, is that a lot of people who are undocumented are fearful of just letting you take a picture of their ID, which is what's required for curative.
So at this point, what would change? I guess my question would be is, if the county, why is the county opting out of this other than just being the middleman agency? If they were saying that, they don't want to be accountable for any of that billing, who's accountable for that billing at this point?
So they're not saying that they don't want to be accountable for the billing. That's what I'm saying. That is their reason. They're saying that they want to get people away from getting used to getting tested once a week, which made zero sense to me. Like, that excuse made zero sense. So that was my question earlier. Like, who is going to be the person or the agency that steps up to provide testing to everybody? We need to make sure that everybody's tested, regardless if they have insurance, regardless if they're safe showing their ID. Who's going to step up and do that? And I don't know who that is right now, because the county doesn't want to do it.
Okay, so if we're providing it, are we paying for anything that the county would have paid for before?
No.
So what did the county pay for before that they're worried about paying for now, maybe?
So what happens now is that if if someone gets tested and they don't provide proper documentation so that their testing can get reimbursed, Curative was having the county pay for all of those tests. So Curative tests somebody, and then they send the bill to somebody for reimbursement. If something happens where that they didn't, like somebody gave them an insurance that wasn't really their insurance, or somebody gave them ID that wasn't really ID, something didn't check out, Curative doesn't get reimbursed for that, the county had to pay for each one of those people. So now that the county's removed themselves, Curative is now on the hook to pay for any test that is not fully reimbursable, which is gonna make them much more strict about who they test and who they don't, so they can make sure they're reimbursed for everything.
Got it. So now that we're taking on the agreement, will we be the ones to make sure that that's going to get paid?
No, Curative is responsible. All Curative is doing is just leasing the right to use the facility.
Got it. So this is
Leasing
simply
is a
Leasing is a terrible
tricky
name.
word because they're not paying anything. but
Facilities use
Facilities use
permit.
agreement.
Yeah.
being,
Yeah.
so they're being permitted, so we're making sure they're just permitted to continue operations.
Yeah.
However, we know that because they're a private agency, that they're not necessarily going to serve our undocumented community or unhoused or whoever else can't afford it. So that would be, or access it. That would be a primary concern of mine. I think obviously this is just a necessary step, it looks like, but it raises very important questions. I know there are ongoing and now resuming discussions with other public officials across the county. We haven't had those calls for quite some time now, but as one of the lowest income public agencies in our county, our school district is doing a lot. We go above and beyond the call, I think, and we do it well. And I think whether it's meal distribution or testing for COVID, I think the pushback there, part of it is that we need to make sure that the county is doing their job. Certainly there's federal and state funding, and we know from Governor Newsom's budget that some of that funding is coming to our communities through those channels. And so we should push the county, and I would ask maybe that as a resolution, our board put forward a resolution so we can make sure that this isn't the only step we're taking, but that we're making sure that all of our community is served with Curative here, as they have been throughout the prior part of the pandemic.
I understand that.
And I think if we do that, not make it specific to Curative, because there's lots of other testing, just
course.
testing in general. Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
So let's turn to the task of this, if all your questions have been answered regarding this facilities use agreement.
Yeah, if you have any questions, please.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's go ahead and vote on that.
To approve the Curative agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now on to the Cornerstone Earth Group Soil Sampling Agreement. What is your question on that, or have any clarifications, Mr. Ochapente?
Yeah, so for the community, if they haven't been able to read or access this, would anybody like to introduce this first, actually, before I have my questions?
No, I think it's, if you have questions on what is presented here that you've reviewed yourself, you can ask specific questions on it.
Oh, I know, that's what I'm doing, but I'm asking if the district staff wants to talk about it before I begin.
I don't think anybody was prepared to make a presentation about it since it's on the consent agenda. I think Ms. Van Raphorst put it on to the consent agenda.
I
So
can
she can
read
answer your questions, but
the
I
comments.
didn't really prepare a presentation.
Oh, no, I'm not asking for a presentation, just a quick introduction. It's
I
on the
can read
agenda.
what's on the statement here. We worked with Cornerstone Earth Group to do geotechnical sampling. They completed that in October for the new district office and adult education building. And they found pesticides in the earth, and they need to do further investigations so that we can determine the locations, the depth of the soil, and all of that, so that the soil, so we know exactly what's in the soil for the new project, for when the soil's removed, how we will need to dispose of it or store it or whatever, depending on what's in the soil. So it's the soil sampling that was started in October and needs to continue.
Thank you for that information. So, in reading this, obviously one of my concerns is, first of all, what are pesticides doing on our school grounds and our public parks? Westmore Park is a public park. It's existed in our community for decades. Is anybody aware of why there are pesticides at Westmore Park? No? So that's, first request would be, And clearly this is looking to further that. My concern is, of course, as I've mentioned many times before, that we should not be building on a public park given the scope of the development, including Serramonte Del Rey. This is one more reason for me to think in two terms. One, we should know why there are pesticides and we should do the research. But two, this is one more reason why maybe it's not a good idea, because this is a park that should be used for public use. And if people are going to be there, we should be upgrading and renovating our parks instead of letting them go to the point where we're finding these things in them that we didn't know were there before, and it may have impacted our community who have used the park throughout our lives. So I would request a further investigation into why. We should know why. If we're paying an agency to figure these things out, we should go back and figure out who has been or how pesticides have found their way onto our campuses. Certainly our students at Westmore should be informed, and our parents and families who live in the area. But if it's simply in the soil, and this is a soil sample, my second concern is that this is part of a project that had literally zero input from the Westmore community, according to the mitigated negative declaration that was fast-tracked last summer. Literally had zero comments about developing Westmore Park. So this is just one more contract, I get it, in that process, but that process actually is not fully agreed upon. It was never voted on. So my motion would be to remove this item from the agenda pending community input on any development or any future discussion about what we're going to do with Westmore Park.
Okay, so you just you're making a motion to remove this item.
Right.
Okay, do we have a second? Hearing none, your motion has failed.
Move to approve the contract for Cornerstone.
Second.
Get a roll call vote, please. Do you approve the agreement?
Oh, yes, I do have her.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And so the remaining items on the consent agenda, can you have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you have additional public comment?
So yes, we have additional folks here for public comment. I will call your names one by one. You have 3 minutes to make a comment. As these are non-agendized items, the board and district administration cannot respond to you directly, but we can make recommendations if we feel we need to do so. And the first person I have is Hiba. Hiba there?
Oh, hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I honestly didn't even want to attend this meeting. You all are very triggering, and I did go to Westmore High School. I am an alumni, and there is a clear disconnect and a lack of communication with the students and the staff at your schools. The only reason I'm on here is because your students literally posted a call to action on Instagram, begging people to join this meeting and to email you guys public comments. I literally screenshotted, they even made like an email template that I'm gonna read off of. Lack of strict safety protocols at your school. You guys don't acknowledge your feelings or their feelings on the increase of COVID cases and current situation that your schools are under. And you guys don't validate their feelings. They are asking for flexible accommodations for students who cannot attend class due to COVID and who are waiting for test results or showing symptoms, etc. It's very transparent that you guys are just not providing alternatives. And if anything, like you can make school hybrid or make it from home for like a month or two. Like they're literally begging you guys to react differently to the rise of cases. Everything I heard you guys say, it literally seems like oh yeah, COVID's happening, it's whatever. What? Like you guys don't want to spend $1.50 to buy masks for your students in a freaking school district where the superintendent is making 6 figures? Are you serious? Like that should be the bare minimum you should be doing for your students. And how dare you guys silence Nick about Westmore Park? You have no community input about that park. Another reason I'm on the school board meeting is because students that currently go to Westmore told me they want to preserve the park. Instead of demolishing it, you guys should be restoring it for student use. You can probably still make money off of the park if you threw maybe community events there or like fundraisers or anything that actually benefited your students, but you guys are money hungry people who prioritize profits over community. And I'm honestly sick of attending these meetings telling you guys that. And something that is not on the agenda item that I think you all should address is the school to prison pipeline. I'm so sick of going to juvenile hall and seeing students that emerge from your school ending up there. Stop calling schools on your stop calling cops on your campuses. Cops are not meant to deal with school issues. All they do is perpetuate the criminalization of your students at your schools, and they don't do anything to restore that harm that has been done on your campus. Also, we want action. I mentioned this at the council meeting last night that I'm sure you all attended. We Want Action is a student-led organization started at Westmore because you guys did not address sexual assault on campus when students went to the principal and confided in them. Literally, all you do is silence your students. I can't emphasize how, I'm so sick of saying that you guys should listen to them. It is, like I said, it's literally the bare minimum. The minute there was a sexual assault case on campus, all the teachers in the district should have been notified that you guys don't adequately address the needs of your students. And that's all I have to say. Save the garden, save Westmore Park, defund the police.
Thank you. The next speaker is,
Thank you.
is on the list is Jas. Jas, Jas. Okay, so the next person I have is Amy Nguyen. No, Amy?
You want to ask them to identify themselves?
Yeah. And then the next person I have on the list is someone that put their name on the list is the public. Does that person want to raise their hand if they're the public? Okay, so I believe, is anyone in the public? Okay, there we go. Oh, there's two hands up again. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm calling in support of the students and teachers, school staff, but especially the students, because that is the real purpose of a school and a community, is to educate and liberate the next generations, especially. This pandemic is not just a virus pandemic, it's also mental health, it's loss. It's been hard for them too. Most are spending time taking care of their mental health, doing sports or taking walks like at our community parks, like Westmore Park, which is very beneficial for them. Trees that filter air pollutants that help because the virus is airborne. Trees capture and store carbon dioxide, which helps climate change, and nature itself, like a garden, helps alleviate so much stress and helps with mental health. It provides nourishment through food and so much more, and all this should be accessible to students, teachers, and staff, and to all humans. And that's coming from a lot of students here in this district, teachers that have expressed this. Like Trustee Nick said, nothing is final, and we can still meet our needs as a community. This time has also built more resiliency in us, even as we are breaking down, like Trustee Kalima said, but we are a compost, so we will grow regardless. It's clear that the county and state federal government is not going to help. I think you all know that already. No need to keep saying it has stopped. They have stopped a long time ago. Let's do right by all and preserve and expand green space, not build on top of it. And just want to add, there's also being chemicals being sprayed at Serramonte Del Rey. Yesterday, Trustee Kalima said that, how is the garden going to be managed? It has been being managed very well by community volunteers with no real support or funding already. And also wanted to kind of ratify what the last caller said about there being sexual assault and you guys not speaking to it. The youth is, I feel like there's so much, I think you guys already know who I am. You guys know what we've been doing. And I think it's crazy to me how, I know you all care about the garden and it not going away. And we need to save it. Bottom line, we need to save Westmore Park. And if y'all don't do that, I just hope y'all know that it actually is going to be a really bad more effect on our health, on all this, the pandemic. And the community is going to look at you a certain way. And that's gonna affect everything. And that's just me keeping it real. I waited hella fucking long to speak, but I'm here because I care, as a community member and as a former student as well, about the current students and y'all even. So please do the right thing and save the garden, save Westmore Park. And listen.
So much for your comments.
Thank you.
If you want to show the list, is there anyone else that needs to make a comment? So for the call-in user. Hello, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Okay, so I want to clarify things because you guys are actually late, so I want to be respectful about this. But I think the Browns Act law that actually governs meetings. Is that correct? Are you aware of that? Okay, so I'm going to take that as a yes. So critical. Two things in our society. Two biggest challenges in our society is education, which you're doing a good job, obviously, you're a school district, and mental health. What this district can do, this is like paramount. This is so this would be incredible. What this district can do is create a mental health facility at Serramonte Del Rey. They can also create a community center, and they can also obviously help the students. It would be a win-win-win. You guys would be awesome. I would help you so much. I would be so indebted to you. Now, I'll tell you who I am. I'm a longtime resident of the Bay Area. Most recently, Daly City since the 80s. But I'm also a father. I'm a father of children that went to Junior Serra, Westboro, and then subsequently graduated from El Camino. So they actually are young adults now. And back in April of 2021, April of last year, I found out there was a man that was murdered in Daly City. And words cannot describe the feelings I had to tell my children, do not trust the police. Do not trust the police. Do not talk to the police. You are to call me before you talk to anybody, before you exercise your Fifth Amendment. And this community is in crisis. They're in crisis. They're in health crisis. They're in COVID crisis. They're in do not trust the cops crisis. They're just in crisis. And it's a young community. I'm a powerhouse. I'm a huge powerhouse. There is no one in this world that I would fear. I would have Gavin Newsom come down here and talk to me about matters. That's how big I am. I've turned around airplanes. I've had a pilot and a co-pilot turn an airplane around going from SFO to Chicago. I'm a fucking powerhouse. But I need to tell you guys, the community, the young adults are in crisis, and you gotta help them. You need to help them.
Because we do have students in the room.
Okay. Right. So you guys need to help the students. I'm sure they perhaps have heard those words before, but you need to help the students. It's on you. The onus is on you because there's no way that the unaffordable housing will be fully occupied. We're talking about a vacancy rate of 40 to 50%. Okay. 40 to 50%, and the rest.
That is your time. That is your time. Excuse me. That's you've exhausted your 3 minutes. Thank you so much for your comments.
No. I think I should get 6.
Sorry, we only allow minutes. If you want to continue to give us comments, our email addresses are available on our website. But unfortunately, we have to end your comments at this time. Thank you. Is there anyone left on the line that would like to give public comment? Please raise your hand. Okay, so, yes, go ahead. But,
Again.
oh, did they already, okay, sorry. Nope, we've already got you. you've already taken your public comment, so seeing no other hands, we can move on. Thank you.
Now on to our action items. I'm sorry, discussion items. Ms. Van Raphorst, facilities rental rates revisions?
Thank you, President Tejada. Good evening, everyone. Our Director of Facilities, Mr. Peppers, and I have completed an analysis of the costs associated with renting district facilities to the public, and we looked at rates charged for comparable facilities in other districts. And we are bringing before you tonight a new proposed rate sheet that will help us meet the increased cost of utilities and staffing, so that when we allow the community to lease our facilities, that we do not lose money on it. We currently are not renting our facilities due to COVID. We're renting our fields, but not our indoor facilities. But we hope to resume indoor rentals as soon as that makes sense. The rates have not been updated since 2017, and the costs have definitely increased. The proposal is for these rates to go into effect June 1st, 2022, so that the community has some time to adjust to the proposed increases. And if I have direction from the board that you would like to adopt the proposed rates, we could bring it back at the next regular meeting, either on consent or as a regular action item.
Have any questions? Okay, Mr. Lee?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Van Raphorst. I actually did, I took a look just to look at a couple of other districts. I looked at San Mateo Union in particular, and I know most of their theaters are much larger than ours, or a little bit larger, but it seems that the very comparable type of rates, especially when we're looking at the small theaters sizes, that $150 rate seems to be appropriate, and given the fact that we do have a brand new facility at Westmore, comparable in quality, probably in some ways even perhaps better quality to Terra Nova, just because of the larger size and the way the seats are laid out architecturally speaking. These rates do make a lot of sense. We can't really charge what San Mateo is able to do with the Performing Arts Center, for example, but it does put us, at least make us competitive if people are looking for an easily accessible facility. So I'm good with this. Looks good. I'm glad. It's also nice to see a very clear rate schedule, because I know the previous rate schedule for the Terra Nova Theater was very onerous and confusing. And I know I had members of the public, especially in Pacifica, who wanted to rent. They didn't know exactly how to budget for it. So this is very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is an important item. A lot of members in the community that I've talked to, even as a teacher, when I was a teacher with this district, I remember, just talking to people in the community who knew I was a teacher, say, can we use the track? Can we use the fields? When they weren't gated off, people could come use our public facilities. These are all public grounds. Clearly, when it's not school hours, on weekends, I myself began running track here with this district at Westmore, because you could just walk on the track and you could run on the track. It has been brought to my attention various times over the years that, and due to COVID, obviously, it's closed off almost indefinitely, but I do actually believe and agree with many community that they should have access to public grounds. These are public facilities. If they want to use the track, they should have access to the track. If they want to use the new baseball fields at Westmore, they should have access to that. Certainly, if there are other events and leagues and organized activities, we should have, I think, another discussion about that. I don't think at the time, in this discussion I was hearing at the city council level about, the fees for recreation and library programs, and raising the fees for swimming and other programs the city is offering. Two things. One, we are a low-income community, so raising the fees on anything doesn't make any sense to me. It just prohibits and adds another hurdle and barrier to our community actually using the facilities that they're paying for through taxes. So the people who benefit the least are the people who are paying the most for our facilities, especially on school grounds. That's a policy that, even if it is one of our policies, is not only outdated, it's inequitable, and should be updated to actually reflect lower or no fees, if not a waiver of those fees if they're at a certain income level. The same way financial aid applies to many public services beyond school districts, but across public service.
So I just interrupt, that's actually not allowable because it would be a gift of public funds. So when we let somebody use our facilities for free, it has to be connected to education, like the PTO or some districts allow, different student groups. But if it's not connected to education and we let them, use the lights, the heating, we have staff that are cleaning the bathrooms after them, those are all costs that we have then gifted to that organization.
That's the first I've ever heard that argument. I don't agree with it, but I hear it. One thing I'll say is, as school districts, we give out meal distribution during the pandemic. Is one example. We showed a part of that cost because, like anything, these are essential services. Recreational services, physical activities, open space, these are all necessary components of society. In terms of city council obligations, county, state, and federal, there are navigation of those resources one way. If school districts, as you're saying, are hamstrung by public gifting of services, it's inconsistent with many things we do offer on our campuses, including access to adult school and many other services we provide the community, including education. If it is education related, which recreation is, people should be allowed to use our recreational facilities on our campuses free of charge and free of burden. And so there are legal issues there I feel like are not being addressed. I don't expect you to have all the answers, clearly. This is something that needs to be redressed, I think, in our community before and even precluding any discussion of raising fees. They would make our services more privatized and less public, which to me poses actually some very serious considerations legally in terms of how we navigate using public educational facilities for our public, especially moving forward when public needs open space, green space, educational space, as we reimagine many services in public service throughout our society. So I would say, not just on a philosophical level, but on a policy level, that we should take a serious pause on raising rates because we somehow need profit from community who want to use our new theater Westmore. I feel like the new theater Westmore, we should be promoting it and integrating community-based services and organizations to help be a part of it. Certainly, it's a beautiful theater, like Terra Nova's and many in our community and around the county. But I do feel like we should have a completely different approach given what we've learned over the past couple of years. And I don't fault anybody for not bringing that perspective forward prior, but I would actually pause on any raising of rates for our public services to our community that's worried about paying the rent and getting evicted and making sure they can afford masks and the kind of things in our community that we need. So I would make a motion actually to remove this from our agenda this time, at the very least.
Discussion item.
Oh, I mean,
We're already talking about it.
right, I mean, sorry, this is not an action item, but if and when it is being considered, because I know that's the suggestion, I would say, in that sense, we should maybe pause on this in terms of future discussion and other meetings. I just don't feel like.
When it comes to us for action, you can discuss it then. You can make a motion not to.
Yeah, my recommendation, maybe don't agendize this until maybe a future time when we need to, unless we're going to redress it. And part of the discussion would be lowering the fees, if not eliminating and giving a waiver for some of these fees.
So we're discussing this now.
Yeah,
So I like it the way it is. I think that, other school districts make use of their facilities. And Ms. Van Raphorst already addressed the idea of, I think by, Ms. Van Raphorst, you were saying by law, we cannot gift.
Correct. We do have a reduced rate for youth athletic groups that are that are based in Daly City and Pacifica. So that is one way that we have, addressed the community aspect.
I think the 40% rate is great. We always, we tend to sell ourselves short here. Yes, Ms. Aludine.
Oh, I was just gonna say quickly that this is just for, individuals can use our facilities at any time. Like, individuals are always using our fields, always using our, so this is just more for organizational use for if you're doing an extended period or during the day. Everyone I talk to that uses our facility says the rates are really reasonable. I'm looking at the rates, they're really reasonable. But we have to, you know, if you, and I know, because I've seen you at different events, there's a mess. Like, it needs to be cleaned. Like, who is going to clean that up? Are we gonna take on the cost for cleaning, use of bathrooms, the opening and closing? Like, there's a cost to all of opening and closing facilities during
Wear and
off hours.
tear.
Yeah, so, I think we just, you know, these are the costs. To me, it just seems like we're not making money off of these. We're just recuperating the expenses to the district to have events on our site. So that's all I want to say.
She kind of just addressed what I was going to share. So I had the same sentiment. I mean, I book things as well as Trustee Salahuddin for-profit companies going to for-profit places to rent things, and I have looked at them personally, and they are probably more than triple the prices that Ms. Van Bradford is suggesting to rent these facilities, which is more than reasonable, and I feel like it's equitable for other nonprofit communities at this price, you know, to be able to rent facilities. And they all are, you know, realistic that, you know, as much as they would love to do it for free, they know that there's a cost associated with upkeep, and especially the facility is new, so there's more upkeep, right? To have events run at these places. And yes, they do make a mess. I, for one, know, because I do lots of birthday parties for my own kids, and that's why I have them at facilities, so I don't have to clean up. And I'm glad to pay somebody at a reasonable amount of, you know, money to be able to afford that opportunity to have, you know, events at those places. So I just wanted to, Trustee Soliday noticed said the same thing, so thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, just to clarify what Trustee Garrett's saying, you know, talk about private corporations. I wasn't talking about that at all. I'm talking about the public, not private entities. Certainly if there are organizations that want to use a facility and they want to use an organization that's not a public organization, it's private by definition. If it's a community-based organization, it's just a group, friends, or people using a facility, that's what, if people want to run a race at the track, they can certainly do that. One of the things I think should be pointed out, there's no public gifting in this, just to clarify legally. Maintenance of buildings and facilities is an allowable expenditure, certainly something that we provide to anybody visiting our school grounds, just so we're clear. My source is FICMAT, which we do consult on many of our financial decisions. And so one of the things I just want to clarify is to the public, you can use our facilities if you're not able to access them, say on the weekends. Given that we are in the middle of a pandemic, there are different rules that apply, certainly within reason, and I think in an abundance of caution and just consideration of public health for your own and for the community. We need to make sure that our facilities are there first and foremost for our students in our community, our district community. But these are public facilities, so if it's an athletic facility, it's closed off and you're unable to access it, please report that. Feel free to email our district, feel free to email me. And certainly have these discussions in the community because I think they're necessary. We have beautiful educational facilities, and I think they are public facilities that we should be promoting and sharing more than necessarily worrying about our fees. At that rate too, I don't know what organizations routinely come to use our facilities. The 40% rate is one thing. I'm not opposed to considering, given the cost of living and inflation, routine increases to rental fees, which I understand this is part of, but I do feel like the other part of it is it might send the wrong message to the community if we're portraying our school district facilities as more of a business that should be preserved for that reason outside of school hours. In fact, it's something the public should have access to, and I don't think anybody should be kicked off of, say, public grounds or even city parks because somebody else necessarily has rented it out. We should make sure we prioritize use for public use first and foremost.
I'd just like to make a clarification. I was only using it as comparison. for public and private places. That's all I was doing, so.
All right. I think that closes discussion. Now on to the action items. We've got resolution 2021-22/10, authorized signatures. Ms. Van Raphorst.
This is just an opportunity for us to add Ms. Shapiro to the authorized signatories as the new executive director of Daly City Youth Health Center.
Okay. Do you have a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And now Human Resources, Ms. Lujan.
Good evening, everyone. Our first item this evening is a job description update for an assessment technician 3. Adult education, as it has evolved, we go through the process of just evaluating current employees, their job assignments, and their current job description. In reviewing one of our employees, we determined that one employee was classified in one way, and we realized that their assignments include things such as exam proctoring and clerical responsibilities, and so what is before you is a new job description with an employee who is currently doing these responsibilities.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And now on to item 15B2.
Our next item this evening is the COVID-19 pandemic fall stipend payment, this for unrepresented employees. The board has previously approved the stipend payment for members of AFT as well as Teamsters, and so this stipend payment would provide equal compensation to unrepresented employees.
So moved?
Second.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consideration of future agenda items? Anything?
Just as a reminder, in discussion of the renaming of our school district.
Yes, that's on for a future agenda.
Okay, thank you.
And we adjourn tonight's meeting in honor of two persons, Josefina Erfe and John Madden. Josefina Erfe was hired on September 25th, 1996. While at JUHSD, she worked as a clerical aide for Project STARS, a cafeteria cashier and store helper, and finally as the accounts payable technician until her retirement in 2016. Ms. Erfe passed away over the weekend of December 31st to January 2nd, 2021, and she is survived by her daughter, Jennifer. John Madden graduated from Jefferson High School in 1954, where he played baseball, basketball, and football. Mr. Madden passed away on December 28, 2021. After college, Mr. Madden coached football at San Diego State University, and then at age 32 was named the NFL's youngest coach at the time as leader of the Oakland Raiders. He became one of the most successful coaches in NFL history, leading the Raiders to numerous playoffs and a Super Bowl win in 1977, a legendary Emmy-winning sports broadcaster, and the face and spirit of the Madden NFL video game. He was inducted into the Daly City Sports Hall of Fame, class of 2000. At the Hall of Fame dinner, he announced that he would donate to Jefferson High School the cost of purchasing and installing stadium lights for the football field, which are now known as the Madden Lights. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2006. We, the Jefferson Union High School District Board of Trustees, send our condolences to Ms. Erfe's and Mr. Madden's family, friends, and host of loved ones. Move to adjourn.
Adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, I mentioned that to you.